have not already heard of me, you probably have heard of my husband before. His story is known throughout the lands far and wide. His reputation doth precedes him. The tale of my husband is what brings us here today. For while there is only one Frankenstein, there are a very great many retellings of this tale. Today I have rounded up all of the retellings of my husband's story that I could find. I am going to start with the retellings that I feel like truly honor his story and do justice to the original tale that Mary Shelley wrote. Please stick around for this roundup of the best Frankenstein retellings. I read as many Frankenstein retellings as I could in preparation for this video, so I am going to talk about first the 4 that I was able to read in preparation for this video, and then go through a list of many other Frankenstein retellings out there that I would like to check out. Let's start with my favorite one that I read, and that is Our Hideous Progeny by C.E. McGill. Our Hideous Progeny is set after the original tale of Frankenstein. We are now a little bit farther into the future, and we are following the story of Victor Frankenstein's granddaughter. When she finds her grandfather's letters detailing how he resurrected a creature out of parts from the dead, we then see her and her husband try to resurrect a creature, build a being out of many dead parts and pieces. This is a phenomenal Frankenstein-inspired read. There is so much excellent feminist commentary in here, and I love the strong, powerful main female protagonist of this book. This one did take me a little while to actually get into it because it does get a little bit nitty-gritty with the science aspect, and there is quite a bit of backstory on the characters' lives. But once we do start to get to some of the resurrection bits of the story, I was absolutely hooked. I loved seeing the character grow throughout this novel, and the ending really made me very emotional. It's really stuck with me. Out of all of the Frankenstein-inspired books I've read, this is the one that has stuck with me the strongest. I just really connected to this one, and if I could recommend you one like Frankenstein-adjacent book out of this entire list, it would be Our Hideous Progeny. The next one I read was The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein by Kiersten White. This book does closely follow the original tale of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, but instead of being told through the perspective of Victor Frankenstein, we're actually following this story through a different side character of this book, Elizabeth. It was a very interesting take on Frankenstein. This is another one that honestly, I really haven't been able to stop thinking about since I read it. I really liked getting to see a more nuanced look at the characters and feeling like I could connect deeper with some of the side characters that are in Frankenstein. I love seeing Elizabeth's story expanded and getting more of a context on her character and her feelings and emotions. I will say though that this is another one that took me a little while to really get into it because we are seeing how much Elizabeth looks up to and almost is obsessed with Victor Frankenstein. In the original story of Frankenstein, Elizabeth is adopted and taken in by Victor's family when she is a young child. She is essentially gifted to Victor, and it is Victor's mother's hope that these two will one day marry and end up together. It's pretty weird by today's standards imagining that. The reason I say it took me a little while to get into the Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein is because we see Elizabeth being so completely obsessed with Victor, and we do understand why, it is explained, but Victor in this book is a total toilet plunger. He was infuriating, and sometimes watching Elizabeth indulge him and put up with him and make excuses for him was pretty frustrating, but I will say there is a very good payoff by the end of this book. There was also some pretty good mic drop plot twist moments in this one. I read all of these before I read Frankenstein, except for The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein, in which I read like in conjunction with this one. So I would read a couple chapters of this and then read a couple chapters of that. And so there was a couple moments that I did not know what was going to happen, and it was a crazy plot twist and kind of was a jaw drop moment. Overall, I did greatly enjoy this book and I would strongly recommend it. The next one I read is The Mary Shelley Club by Goldy Moldavsky. In this book, we are following a girl who moves to a new school because she is running away from a tragedy that has happened to her. So she goes to a new school for a fresh start. And once there, she meets a group of kids who have this very mysterious club that they call the Mary Shelley Club. She eventually is initiated into their club. There is a lot of horror movie appreciation in this book because the main character loves horror films. They are a great comfort to her as she is trying to heal from and process the trauma that she experienced. But I will say that this one really disappointed me because the whole point of this project is I was trying to immerse myself in the Frankenstein vibes, in the retellings, and I really did not feel very much connection at all to Frankenstein or Mary Shelley in this book at all. To me, this felt way more slasher and like the film Scream inspired than anything even remotely related to Mary Shelley. It didn't feel like it was living up to or doing Mary Shelley justice at all. I will also say the ending was really, really, really predictable. You're told from very early on in the book who you should be suspecting, and it's kind of frustrating when it turns out to have been this character all along. It just felt very anticlimactic. I rated this one a 3-star. It is not a terrible book by any means. There are some pretty fun elements to it, but if you are looking for a book that is going to evoke Frankenstein for you, this is not the one for you. If you are a huge fan of slasher films, particularly the franchise Scream, I do think that you will enjoy the Mary Shelley Club because that is the kind of vibes that I was getting from this book. The final book that I was able to read in preparation for this video is Hideous Love, the story of the girl who wrote Frankenstein by Stephanie Hemphill. Now, this was actually the first book that I read in this project, and I truly believe that this was the perfect book to start with. This is actually my very first time ever reading Frankenstein, and I truly believe that that was the perfect way to go into this book. If you have not already read Frankenstein, but you are interested in it, I would also strongly recommend you read Hideous Love before reading Frankenstein. What this book is essentially a novel told in verse telling the life of the author of Frankenstein, Mary Shelley. You learn so much about Mary Shelley in this book, and why I feel like this was such a successful read is because it gave me a taste of a subject and it hooked me and made me just want to learn so much more about it. I feel like this book gave Mary Shelley a personality. I felt like it was able to give a voice to this author who lived centuries ago, and it was crafted in a way that made Mary Shelley so much more than just a name. I am so fascinated by Mary Shelley now and her life. She is so interesting to me. She is so smart. She was such a pioneer for women. And I find that I'm almost more interested in Mary Shelley than I am in Frankenstein itself. Like, this is a fantastic, amazing book. I don't know, I'm almost more interested in her story than this book, which is kind of funny. So Hideous Love was a super successful read for me. If you want to learn more about the author, definitely check this one out. Now I am going to get into the 10 additional books that I have found that I am interested in reading that are either Frankenstein retellings, biographies on Mary Shelley's life, or books that are just somehow Frankenstein inspired. Let's go ahead and start with the book that I am #1 most interested in checking out, and that is Mary and the Birth of Frankenstein by Anne Eekhout. This one looks so interesting to me because, like I said, after reading Hideous Love, I almost feel more interested in Mary Shelley than I am in Frankenstein itself, and this book, Mary and the Birth of Frankenstein, is a book that centers around Mary Shelley. This is actually a sapphic retelling of Mary Shelley's life. This book is a blend of fact and fiction, and it is pitched as an imaginative exploration of the roots of her literary masterpiece, Frankenstein. This is as well a translated work. It is originally written in Dutch. This is without a doubt one of my most anticipated reads, and I am so excited to read this book. The next one on my list is a fun romance book, and that is Angelika Frankenstein Makes Her Match by Sally Thorne. This is the same author who gave us The Hating Game, and this book is a historical romantic comedy that imagines Victor Frankenstein's sheltered younger sister and her attempts to create the perfect man. Filled with carriages, candlesticks, and corpses, this is the spooky season reimagining of the well-known classic that reminds us to never judge a man by his cadaver. I do think I will definitely have to check this book out at some point. I think that this could be a perfect palate cleanser between some heavier, darker horror reads, so I certainly will be checking this book out some point in the future. The next book on my list is Frankenstein in Baghdad by Ahmed Saadawi. Frankenstein in Baghdad follows the main character Addie, who is a scavenger who collects human body parts and stitches them together to create a corpse. His goal, he claims, is for the government to recognize the parts as people and to give them a proper burial. But when the corpse goes missing, a wave of eerie murder sweeps the city. Addie soon realizes that he has created a monster, one that needs human flesh to survive. This sounds like such an interesting horror novel that I'm sure has a lot of social commentary in it as well. The next book on my list is Mary's Monster: Love, Madness, and How Mary Shelley Created Frankenstein by Lita Judge. This book sounds so good. I need to find myself a copy of this. This is actually a biography of Mary Shelley, and it is told through free verse and over 300 full bleed illustrations. Once again, you guys know I've said it several times now, but I am fascinated by Mary Shelley and her life. This is one that I need to find a physical copy of. I need to see some of these illustrations because that sounds so good. Even just the cover is gorgeous to me. I also do love and adore reading graphic novels, so this is one that I'm probably gonna have to scour the internet for and find a copy of. The next book on my list is Spare and Found Parts by Sarah Maria Griffin. In this book, we are following Nell, who has always been an outsider. She lives in a city that is devastated by an epidemic where all survivors are missing parts, whether that be an arm, a leg, an eye. Her father is a famed scientist who has created the biomechanical limbs that everyone now uses. One day, while salvaging on the beach, Nell finds a mannequin hand. This is the first boy's hand she has ever held, and inspiration strikes. Nell then begins sinking deeper and deeper into a plan to build her own companion while learning more about her city and her father, who is also hiding secret experiments of his own. This sounds like it's going to be like a sci-fi steampunk sort of dystopian fantasy, and it's another one that I am very interested in checking out. I definitely have to say that this experiment of reading these Frankenstein-inspired books while reading the classic novel for the very first time has definitely set me down a path of reading anything and everything that has ever been written that is somehow inspired by Frankenstein. I just have found myself totally entranced by this world, by these characters, by this author, and I simply cannot get enough. The next book on my list is Unnatural Creatures, a novel of the Frankenstein women by Kris Waldherr. Unnatural Creatures is a reimagining of Frankenstein following the three women closest to Victor Frankenstein. We follow his mother, Caroline, his bride, Elizabeth, and the servant, Justine, revealing the feminine side of the tale. I love that this one is also a take on the female characters in Frankenstein, similar to the Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein. So that's another one I definitely am interested in checking out. The next one on my list is actually a series called The Apprenticeship of Victor Frankenstein. The first one in the series is This Dark Endeavor by Kenneth Oppel. In This Dark Endeavor, we are following twins Victor and Conrad, who are inseparable until Conrad falls gravely ill. In the Forbidden Dark Library, Victor finds an ancient formula and seeks an alchemist to recreate the elixir of life. With the help of his friends Elizabeth and Henry, they will scale the highest trees in the Stromwald, dive the deepest lake caves, and each sacrifice a body part. This one is an older publication. It's also a young adult book, so I don't know how well this one will have held up now in 2023. I may still end up checking this one out. It does sound like an interesting take on Frankenstein. The next book on my list is The Monsters, Mary Shelley and the Curse of Frankenstein by Dorothy and Thomas Hoobler. This one starts with the origin of Frankenstein, where we see how Mary Shelley was inspired and came up with the story. This book draws upon letters and rarely tapped archives and explores the curse of Frankenstein. That one does sound interesting to me as well, seeing as we will focus on some of the real characters in Mary Shelley's life. The next book on my list is another young adult series, and that is Cadaver and Queen by Alisa Kwitney. This one sounds very, very similar to the book I spoke about earlier, Spare and Found Parts, because this one seems to have a very strong steampunk element to it, where we see biomechanical engines mixed with the Frankenstein inspiration. The final book on my list is Unwieldy Creatures by Addie Brooks Tsai. This is a biracial, queer, non-binary retelling of Frankenstein, following the story of three beings who all navigate life from the margins. I love the idea of a queer, non-binary retelling of Frankenstein. It also looks like this is a gender-swapped version of Frankenstein. I will definitely have to check out this one to see what the author does with it. Those are all of my recommendations in this video. Like I said in the beginning of this video, if you could only check out one of these books, I would strongly recommend Our Hideous Progeny by C.E. McGill. Also as well, Hideous Love by Stephanie Hemphill. That was also a very excellent read. If you have any books that you know that are inspired by Frankenstein that you would recommend, please leave me a comment down below letting me know what that book is. But other than that, I am off to find my husband, for there is a lightning storm tonight, and we are off to get a jolt of the electrodes. But other than that, thank you for joining me, the Bride of Frankenstein, in today's video. I hope you have a very happy and spooky Halloween, and I will see you tomorrow.